Today's video is sponsored by War Thunder. Utah is home to about 3.4 million people in total, making it one of the smaller states in the country by population. But within the state, about 80% of all people live within the pretty small region around Salt Lake City, leaving the rest of the state feeling pretty empty. So why don't more people live outside of the Salt Lake region? And what happens to those that do if the Great Salt Lake ever dries up? Welcome to Geography by Geoff. Today we're off to the Beehive State to explore its unique population distribution and looming issue with a shrinking Great Salt Lake. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from today's video is that Utah is very different in almost every way from all other states. But first, today's podcast is all about the national parks of the United States. Utah itself is home to 5 of them, but they're spread throughout the country, and how one gets placed comes with some fascinating geographic questions. You can listen to that episode right now, right here on YouTube, or whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. All links are in the description below. Utah has perhaps one of the most interesting histories of any states within the United States. While most states were founded under the ideals of manifest destiny and expansionism under the auspices of the United States federal government, the state of Utah would begin as something completely different. But as usual, long before the European settlers and pioneers set foot in Utah, a diverse array of indigenous peoples had thrived in the region for thousands of years. Among them were the ancestral Puebloans, also known as the Anasazi, who left behind a legacy of intricate cliff dwellings and sophisticated agricultural techniques. But the Fremont people, known for their unique rock art and pit houses, were also very prominent in this region. These early inhabitants developed complex societies deeply connected with the rugged landscapes of the Great Basin and the Colorado Plateau, and eventually would form the modern tribes of the Shoshone, Paiute, and Ute peoples. The arrival of Spanish explorers in the 1500s, however, marked the beginning of the colonial era in the region. But due to the region's harsh terrain, it was not until the early 1800s that the European presence became significantly felt, primarily through the activities of fur trappers and traders. The Spanish and later Mexican territories included the land that would become Utah, but their hold on it was tenuous at best, primarily focused on other parts of their North American territories. The pivotal moment in Utah's history came with the arrival of the Mormons, also known as the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Fleeing persecution in the eastern United States, the first group of Mormon pioneers, led by Brigham Young, entered the Salt Lake Valley on July 24, 1847. Viewing the valley as their promised land, they immediately set to work establishing a settlement that would eventually become Salt Lake City. This first group of settlers brought 3 enslaved African peoples with them, making Utah the only place in the western United States to have African slavery. The Mormon settlers' initial years were fraught with challenges, including conflicts with the indigenous peoples whose lands they were stealing, and tensions with both the Mexican and US governments, who were at war at the time, and neither of which sanctioned the settlement. But following the war, the Utah Territory would officially be established in 1850, with Brigham Young as its first governor. But Utah would continue to remain outside the Union as a full state for almost half a century, partly due to the Mormons' practice of polygamy, which was at odds with American laws and societal norms. The path to statehood was a long and arduous one, requiring the Mormons to renounce polygamy and make significant concessions to align with the United States' social and legal frameworks. Utah's incorporation into the United States as the 45th state on January 4, 1896, marked the culmination of this journey, opening a new chapter in its history. Today, Utah stands as one of the most beautiful states in the country, bound by a geography that is truly incredible to behold. But before we dive into the physical geography of Utah, if you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button. More fun geography videos are just a single click away. Today's video is brought to you by War Thunder, the ultimate free-to-play combat game, playable on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. More than just combat, War Thunder offers a deeply immersive experience with a highly detailed damage model for vehicles. And with over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 countries and through 100 years of military history, you're thrust into the heart of incredibly realistic battles. War Thunder also caters to all players with 3 gameplay modes: arcade for fast-paced action with simplified physics, realistic for a balanced mix of authenticity and intensity, and simulator for the utmost challenge with full realism. And all of this is available on a wide range of hardware. For a limited period, signing up through my exclusive link grants you a special bonus pack, including premium vehicles, the unique Eagle of Valor Decorator, 100,000 Silver Lions, and a 7-day premium account, available to both new and returning players after a 6-month hiatus, across all platforms. So join War Thunder and its 70 million strong player base. If you're a fan of intense PvP action, military history, or planes, tanks, and battleships, this is the game for you. Utah's physical geography is truly a spectacle to behold. The state is filled with natural wonders that would make much larger states blush. Among these are the Great Salt Lake, the Rocky Mountains, the Colorado Plateau, and the abundance of national parks. Each plays a pivotal role in Utah's environmental and cultural significance. At the heart of Utah's physical geography are the Rocky Mountains, extending into the northeastern part of the state. These mountains, part of a larger range that stretches across North America, are characterized by high peaks, deep canyons, and diverse ecosystems. The Uinta Mountains, unique for running east to west, house Utah's highest point, Kings Peak, which soars to 13,528 feet above sea level. These mountainous areas are not just significant for their elevation and beauty, but also for their role in water provision, acting as crucial watersheds for the region. To the west of the Rockies, Utah transitions into the Great Basin, a vast expanse of arid land that encompasses much of the western third of the United States. Unlike other areas where rivers flow towards the ocean, the Great Basin's waterways have no outlet to the sea, leading to the creation of saline lakes like the Great Salt Lake. Speaking of which, the Great Salt Lake is the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere and is a remnant of ancient Lake Bonneville, which once covered much of western Utah. Its current size and salinity are the result of millennia of evaporation and the lake's lack of an outlet to the sea. This isolation has created a unique ecosystem for millions of migratory birds, brine shrimp, and several species of algae that thrive in its saline environment. Moving to the southeast, Utah is dominated by the Colorado Plateau, a high, dissected plateau known for its stunning landscapes. It's this plateau that houses Utah's abundance of national parks, collectively known as the Mighty Five. These parks, Arches, Bryce Canyon, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, and Zion, each offer unique geologic features that are both awe-inspiring and very accessible. Arches National Park, for example, is renowned for its over 2,000 natural sandstone arches, while Bryce Canyon is famous for its hoodoos, spire-shaped rock formations created by frost weathering and stream erosion. Canyonlands is a vast wilderness of canyons and mesas carved by the Colorado River, and Capitol Reef is known for its colorful canyons, ridges, buttes, and monoliths. Zion, perhaps the most famous of Utah's national parks, dazzles with its steep red cliffs, narrow canyons, and diverse plant and animal life. Utah has an incredible geography that few other places in the world can match. But if you've been keeping track, you'll also note that it's very rugged, and this plays into why so few Utahns live outside of the Salt Lake City region. The concentration of Utah's population around Salt Lake City is not merely a matter of chance or convenience, but the result of historic, geographic, and religious reasons. And central to this story is the arrival and settlement of the Mormons in the Salt Lake Valley and their enduring impact on the state. The origins of this demographic pattern can be traced back to July 24, 1847, when Brigham Young, the second president of the Mormon Church, led the first group of Mormon pioneers into the Salt Lake Valley. Seeking a sanctuary where they could practice their religion free from persecution, the Mormons viewed the valley as their promised land. Brigham Young famously declared, "This is the right place," upon viewing the area. The isolation of the Salt Lake Valley, surrounded by deserts and mountains, offered the Mormons a degree of protection and the opportunity to establish a community according to their religious beliefs and social structures. These early Mormon settlers embarked on an ambitious project to make the desert valley habitable. They constructed an extensive irrigation system, channeling water from the nearby mountains to the arid valley floor, transforming it into fertile farmland. This ability to make the desert blossom as a rose was key to their survival and success in the region. The initial settlement quickly grew as more Mormons migrated to the area, drawn by reports of a safe haven where they could live in accordance with their faith. Because of this, Salt Lake City became the spiritual, cultural, and economic center of the Mormon settlement in the West. The construction of the Salt Lake Temple, which took 40 years to complete, symbolized the permanence of the Mormon presence in the valley. As the headquarters of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Salt Lake City attracted Mormons from around the world. This centralization of the church's activities and its followers in and around the city laid the groundwork for the population distribution seen in Utah today. The impact of the Mormons in Utah extends far beyond this demographic concentration around Salt Lake City. They established a strong sense of identity, which has influenced the state's culture, politics, and economy. The church's emphasis on community welfare, education, and family has shaped the social fabric of Utah. Moreover, the church's historic practice of encouraging large families initially contributed to Utah's high birth rates, further concentrating the population around areas where the church's influence was strongest. But for all the power and influence the Mormon Church has had on developing the Salt Lake Valley, their abilities are still limited by the ever-present and intimidating geography of Utah as a whole. The fact of the matter is that, despite its natural beauty, it's incredibly hard to develop large urban centers in Utah due to the lack of water. And agriculture, a historic reason for many initial settlements to exist, suffers from this same problem. Though it's worth highlighting that, despite these obstacles, Utah has about 17,000 square miles of agricultural land, or about 20% of the entire state. Finally, in addition to the state being relatively dry and barren, the state's climate is also pretty harsh. According to the Köppen method of determining climate across geographies, outside of the Salt Lake Valley, and a few other places, which can still get quite hot, the rest of the state is classified as semi-arid or desert, neither of which typically draw large populations. Today, Utah would be led by the overwhelmingly dominant Salt Lake City metropolitan area with 1.3 million people. This would be followed by the nearby metro regions of Provo and Ogden with about 700,000 people each. All three are located within the greater Salt Lake region and make up about 2.7 million people, or about 80% of the state's entire population. Outside of this area, the largest metro region would be St. George with about 200,000 people and Logan with 133,000 people. Aside from those, there are no urban centers with more than 100,000 people. And this poses an interesting problem for Utah because its largest lake, the Great Salt Lake, is drying up at a rapid pace. The Great Salt Lake, the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere, is facing an existential crisis. Its waters have been receding at an alarming rate, a trend that poses significant environmental, economic, and social challenges for the state and its inhabitants. At the core of this lake's decline is the reduced inflow of freshwater from its tributaries. The rivers and streams that feed into the Great Salt Lake have been increasingly diverted for agricultural, industrial, and municipal use, a practice that has grown alongside Utah's booming population. Agriculture in particular accounts for a significant portion of the water use of the state, consuming over 80% of Utah's water resources. As these demands on freshwater sources have increased, less water has reached the lake, leading to a decrease in its overall volume and surface area. The impact of climate change further exacerbates this situation. Utah, like much of the American West, has experienced periods of intense drought over the last few decades, a pattern that scientists predict will become more frequent and severe due to global warming. These drought conditions reduce the amount of snowpack in the surrounding mountains, further decreasing the flow of water into the lake. The combination of human water usage and climate-induced drought has resulted in a dramatic drop in the lake's level, threatening its ecological balance and the benefits it provides to the region. The consequences of the Great Salt Lake's shrinkage are far-reaching from environmental to economic, but perhaps most alarming is that the shrinking of the lake exposes more of its lake bed, which can lead to air quality issues for nearby communities. Wind-blown dust from the dry lake bed, laden with heavy metals and other toxins, poses health risks to the population of the greater Salt Lake region, including respiratory problems and other health concerns. The ongoing shrinkage of the Great Salt Lake calls for urgent and concerted efforts to address its root causes. Water conservation measures, more efficient water use in agriculture and industry, and policies aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions are critical to mitigating the impacts of climate change and human consumption on the lake. Otherwise, the Salt Lake Valley and its 2.7 million people could face an existential crisis. Utah is an incredible state. Its natural beauty is truly a sight to behold. But the state also has some very unique and unfortunate problems. And while the vast majority of Utah's population is within the Salt Lake region, the shrinking Great Salt Lake could pose livability problems in the near future. Check out War Thunder, the sponsor of today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning all about Utah. If you did, please subscribe to my channel. If you want to watch more videos, click here. If you want to listen to the podcast, click here. Thanks for watching. See you next time.